You were never supposed to be here. That's what my grandmother said to me just hours before she died. Not, I love you, not take care of your family, nothing normal, nothing comforting. Just that. And then she pressed something into my hand. Cold, small, metal. And before I could even ask what she meant, before I could say anything at all, she turned her face away like she had already said too much. That was the last time I ever heard her voice. So, let me ask you something. What would you do if someone you trusted your entire life looked at you in their final moments and told you that you weren't supposed to exist? Would you ignore it? Or would it haunt you? Because it haunted me. My name is Lena Carter. I'm 24 years old, and up until that moment, I thought I understood my life, my family, where I came from. But standing there in that hospital room, with machines beeping softly in the background and my grandmother refusing to look at me, something shifted. Something broke. At the funeral, it got worse. People weren't crying the way families usually do. They were watching, whispering, glancing at me like I didn't belong there. My Aunt Patricia wouldn't even hug me. She just gave me this tight smile and said, "You should stay close to your parents today." Stay close? Why did that sound like a warning? And my parents, Mark and Diane, barely spoke to me the entire day. Every time I tried to bring up what Grandma said, they shut it down immediately. "It doesn't matter," my mom said quickly. Too quickly. My dad didn't even look at me. That's when I realized something. They weren't confused. They were scared. And suddenly, that sentence, "You were never supposed to be here," didn't feel random anymore. It felt intentional. That night, I sat alone in my apartment staring at the object my grandmother gave me. I hadn't opened it yet. I told myself it was because I wasn't ready. But the truth? I was afraid. Afraid that whatever was inside would prove that everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. I turned it over in my hands. My heart was racing now. Slowly, carefully, I opened it. And the second I saw what was inside, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. What I found inside wasn't just strange, it was impossible. The locket was old, scratched along the edges, and surprisingly heavy for its size. I carefully pried it open with trembling fingers, and there it was, a photograph. A woman, young and radiant, staring back at me with eyes that were identical to mine. Not similar, identical. My own reflection staring out from the past. On the back of the photo was a name I didn't recognize, Isabella. I froze. Isabella who? And why did she look like me? My mind immediately went to my parents, Mark and Diane. I had to know. I had to ask. I brought the locket to my mother that night. "Mom, who is this?" I asked, voice shaking. Her reaction wasn't what I expected. She went pale, her hands trembled, and she suddenly looked anywhere but at me. "It's just someone from the family long ago. An old friend. Nothing for you to worry about." Nothing for... The first letter I opened started with a line that made my blood run cold. If you're reading this, it means they never told you the truth about how you came into this world. And in that moment, I realized my life, everything I thought I knew, was about to unravel completely. My parents knew her. They lied about it. So who was she, and why does she look exactly like me? That question ran through my head nonstop as I sat on my bed, the letters spread around me like a puzzle I didn't yet know how to solve. I knew I had to confront them again. This time, I couldn't back down. Not anymore. "Mom, Dad, "Who is Isabella?" I asked at dinner, trying to keep my voice steady. Mark slammed his fork down. Diane shrank back, her face pale. The tension in the room was so thick I could cut it with a knife. "She was no one important," my father said, his voice cold. "Lies," I shouted, tears forming. "I found the photos. I have letters from Grandma. I know you're hiding something." The room went silent. Diane broke down, sobbing, but still refusing to explain. Mark stood and left without another word. Aunt Patricia's eyes glinted with warning from across the table. I realized then that this wasn't just about the past. It was about power, about control, about secrets that had been buried so deep that bringing them to light threatened everything. I needed answers, and if they wouldn't give them, I'd find them myself. I spent the next few days digging, public records, archives, old birth certificates, and then I found her, Isabella Reyes, died 24 years ago, cause, complications during childbirth. The dates matched, the resemblance was undeniable. My heart pounded. Could it be? Was Isabella my real mother? And if that was true, why had my parents raised me as their own? The more I searched, the more pieces of the puzzle surfaced. Letters, hidden in my grandmother's old desk, revealed Isabella's thoughts, her fears, her struggles, her isolation. She wrote about a pregnancy that nobody wanted, about people who pressured her to give up her child. And then the truth hit me like a punch to the gut. Lena Carter, me, was never supposed to exist. The stakes became unbearably high. Every question I asked, every photo I uncovered, tightened the knot of tension in my chest. I realized the secret wasn't just about family pride. It was about life and death, about love and betrayal, about choices that had been made before I even drew my first breath. And then I found the letters that would change everything. One of them started with a line that made my hands shake. "If you are reading this, it means they never told you the truth about how you came into this world." The words screamed at me from the paper, and I knew I had to face them one final time. Because whatever the truth was, I needed to know, and there was no turning back now. The truth wasn't just hidden, it was erased. That thought haunted me as I sat in my grandmother's old house, letters spread across the dusty floor. Each one was a voice from the past, a whisper from someone who had lived and suffered before I even existed. The letters were from Isabella. She wrote about her love for life, her fear of losing it, and the choices forced upon her by people who were supposed to protect her. Reading them, I realized the gravity of what my grandmother had done. Evelyn had known the whole story, but she had kept it secret, waiting for the right moment. I learned Isabella was my biological mother. She was young, vulnerable, and alone. My father, Mark, had known her before he married my mother. When Isabella became pregnant, pressure from the family, fear of scandal, shame, and control, pushed them toward a cruel plan. They wanted to prevent my existence. But Isabella refused. She chose life for her child. And that child was me. The letters described her struggles, the moments of hope, and the threats she endured. And then came the final heartbreaking truth. Isabella died during childbirth. My parents had taken me in afterward, not out of love at first, but out of obligation and fear of legal consequences. They raised me as their own, but the secret shadowed every interaction, every birthday, every smile. Grandmother Evelyn had disagreed with all of it. She had protected me in her own quiet way, slipping me the locket, leaving the letters, and whispering the words I didn't understand at the time. "You were never supposed to be here." Now I understood. I wasn't supposed to exist because others had tried to erase me before I even took my first breath. I confronted my parents one last time, letters in hand. They had nowhere left to hide. Mark admitted it all, the lies, the pressure, the secrecy. Diane cried, confessing she had grown to love me as her own, even though it started as something else. The weight lifted slightly from my chest. Finally, everything made sense. But the revelation didn't just end the mystery, it changed everything. Aunt Patricia, furious at the truth, stormed out. Some relatives quietly distanced themselves. I was left to navigate the aftermath, processing betrayal, grief, and finally, clarity. Standing at Isabella's grave, I placed the locket on the stone. For the first time, I felt connected to her, the mother I never met but lived inside me. I whispered, "I wasn't supposed to be here, but I am." I walked away knowing the truth, feeling a strange mix of sorrow and empowerment. The secrets that haunted generations could no longer touch me. I owned my story. I owned my life. Because some truths are buried to protect the past, but the truth always finds a way to choose who you become. The truth was finally out, and with it came a torrent of emotions I wasn't prepared for. My parents, Mark and Diane, sat across from me, exhausted, broken, and yet relieved that the secret could no longer suffocate us. Mark admitted everything, how he had known Isabella, how the family had pressured them to erase the pregnancy, how fear and shame had dictated their decisions. Diane confessed she had grown to love me as her own, but for years that love had been shadowed by guilt and secrecy. Everything my grandmother Evelyn had done suddenly made perfect sense. Her cryptic words, her whispered warning, the locket and the letters, it was all meant to guide me, to give me the choice to uncover the truth when I was ready. She had trusted me to handle it, and I finally understood that her actions were not just protective, they were courageous. Emotionally, I felt a release unlike anything I'd experienced before. Years of confusion, of being an outsider in my own family, of doubting my place in the world, melted into clarity. The anger, the betrayal, the fear, they were all valid, but they no longer controlled me. For the first time, I knew exactly who I was. The daughter of Isabella, the granddaughter of Evelyn, and someone who had survived the weight of other secrets. The consequences of uncovering the truth rippled outward. Family dynamics shifted irreversibly. Aunt Patricia distanced herself, angry that I had exposed what she wanted buried. My parents were forced to reckon with their decisions publicly, confronting guilt, shame, and fractured relationships. Socially, I felt the cold stares of relatives who resented the truth. Yet, personally, I felt empowered. I had reclaimed my identity, my history, and my voice. I visited Isabella's grave, placing the locket carefully on the stone. For the first time, I felt connected to her, the mother I never met but lived inside me. I whispered, "I wasn't supposed to be here, but I am." I walked away knowing the truth, feeling a strange mix of sorrow and empowerment. The secrets that haunted generations could no longer touch me. I owned my story. I owned my life. Because some truths are buried to protect the past, but the truth always finds a way to choose who you become.